in it, but maybe. And they were like the business owners and upstat, you know, the richer people of the community and people that were just like the politicians and different businessmen in the community that built this core, because it, like how I said, it was a Wild West town. It was a lawless town that Skagway was. And so they didn't really have law and order. People ran around shooting each other every day over their stuff, over things, stealing, robbing. You know, in the lower states, they would hang somebody for just stealing your horse or stealing something from you, like a piece of bread or whatever. You go to jail. But here, it was just kind of like a free-for-all, basically. But a lot of the people were getting tired of that, so that's why Frank Reed built this 101 corn. And so they decided one day that this was just shortly after the 4th of July in 1898. And actually, Sophie Smith was actually in the 4th of July parade as the honorary mayor of town, basically was called that, and was celebrated, actually. But they had robbed one of these really rich goldmen that had came in to start prospecting. He was already rich from other gold rush and had brought a lot of gold with him, and some of his men like robbed him in broad daylight, and actually they were denying it, and Frank Reed was saying his men did it, and no one to this day can really tell who did it, but they kind of think that Frank Reed set him up to make him even look more bad. And to give them a reason to kick these guys out. So that's basically what they were doing, is just meeting to actually kick him and all his gangsters out of town, which I find to be very nice. But Sophie was not going to have anything to do with it. Throughout the day, when he knew they were meeting up to talk about his fate, he got really drunk, and finally he was like, nope, I'm going to go tell them a piece of my mind, and took his rifle with him down to the wharf. And when he showed up, Frank Reed was guarding the meeting and everything, and they got into an argument talking about what was going to happen, and he's like, this is my town, you're not kicking me out of here, how dare you, you know, I've done so much for this town. And Frank Reed's like, well, so we and all these business people have too, and we're tired of you robbing people, even in broad daylight. And he says, you can't prove any of that, and then, you know, no one has taken his money, blah, blah, blah. And Frank Reed just got, Sophie Smith said, well, I'm not leaving without a fight. And that gave Frank Reed the opportunity to say, okay. And he pulled out his pistol and shot at Sophie, and it actually misfired. It didn't fire at all. And that gave Sophie a chance to pull up his rifle, and both of them, you know, re-aimed and shot at the same time. And Sophie died before his body even hit the ground. He got shot directly in the heart. And Frank Reed got shot in the nether regions, which I find very funny that his name is Frank, so I always say he got shot in the Frankenbeans. So there you go. But he died a miserable 10 days later from an infection from that shot. But they actually, to this day, don't know if Frank Reed actually killed Sophie Smith, because actually when they looked at his body, he had 2 gunshots, and they don't know who was the one that gave the fatal shot. So, but they still honored Frank Reed for killing the notorious con artist of Skagway. He was, celebrated, and he was given a very nice grave. It's covered all in granite. It's got a big cindelar concrete thing erected over put in what they call the zoning of the graveyard. They actually rezoned it, and they put him off to the side, so he's like 3 feet outside of the graveyard to not offend all the other people that are in the graveyard. And his grave has bars around it like he's in jail. But actually, Frank Reed's body stayed over there on the ground at the wharf for almost 3 days. No one cared. And then finally, a priest took pity on him, took some of the money out of their devotion, and hired a cart man to bury him, and they buried him there in the cemetery. Well, to come find out that Frank Reed was not much better than a man than Sophie Smith. He actually was a con artist as well. He actually came to town claiming that he was a surveyor, and he actually stole the surveyor's equipment and actually surveyed Skagway. He was a surveyor, but he was not the hired surveyor. He lied. But he's the one that mapped out Skagway for the way it is now. And he was actually found later on wanted for murders in another state, the lower states, over an argument of money. He shot a man in the back and was actually acquitted for that. But you know, who knows? You know, when you have a lot of money and a lot of people behind you, you're going to get away with whatever. So